Welcome in to the Pay Dirt Profile Podcast. We have a mini-sode. We're going to be doing some player profiles and some breakdowns of some of the upcoming 2020 NFL prospects. I'm here with Kyle. The rest of the other guys can't make it with us this time, but if you're listening, you can find us at the Sounder app. You can also find us Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, Spotify. And if you want to bring us in somewhere else, then let us know. You can find us on all social medias at the Pay Dirt Profile and our Facebook group, the Pay Dirt Profile Podcast. So we're going to be doing some reviews on certain positions, and we'll be back with you as soon as possible to bring you some additional ones. All right, today we are going to sit down, have a little discussion about Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm. Jake is listing in at 6'2", about 215 pounds. He's been a starter for a couple years now. A guy who has a limited ceiling in a lot of people's eyes, but there's a lot to like. Do you have any initial thoughts on Jake Fromm?
3-year starter. Played on some really good Georgia teams and won a lot of games. Mm-hmm. Took care of the football. And like you said, ceiling may be limited, but I think someone's going to be happy to pick him up, to be a bridge guy, a quality backup type of guy. And you never know, you might see him pop up and start at some point, mm-hmm. and be a credible starter.
Right. I have his comp probably on the low end, closer to A.J. McCarron, mm-hmm. Guy who's been on a couple of different teams but has been the number 2. And then, maybe on the mid to higher end, Andy Dalton, a guy who's won some games. He's been in the playoffs. He's led his team to some success, but hasn't necessarily been a guy that, people around the league have been enamored with as far as skill set. Now, Dalton is definitely more mobile than Fromm, and I think that's one of the knocks on him, his ability to
Podcast. What's up?
What's up, bro? How you doing?
Chilling.
Jamar came in. Say what's up to the fans, Jamar.
What's happening, fam?
So Jake Fromm is a guy who kind of struggles a little bit with athleticism. He has a very limited skill set in that regard. But the thing that he does is that he makes up for it with his feet. He's very, very mechanically sound. His feet are married to his eyes. He's able to make snap decisions. He's able to sidestep and evade pressure on occasion. So it's definitely something where, he's going to be best suited to be in a kind of like quick hit, like West Coast style offense. But if you do ask him to uncork a couple of balls down the field, he does have requisite arm strength. It's definitely not a strength of his. His arm strength is going to become an issue if you're asking him to throw multiple shots down the field every game. But he could probably get you 2 to 3 deep balls, along the sideline or deep post off play action. He has average ball placement on occasion, and I think it's mostly limited or mostly based on his limited arm strength. I mean, you could see this play right here. We're watching his game against LSU in the championship game, SEC championship. He has a guy wide open down the hash, probably 35 yards down the field, and instead of hitting him on a dime and that guy running, the remaining 30 yards for a touchdown, he throws the ball, the guy dives to try to make the play, but, it hits the ground as an incomplete pass. So, I watched games, this game specifically, 2019 LSU, watched his following game against Baylor, Notre Dame, and Auburn. Also, his 2018, we saw him play against Auburn, and his game against Oklahoma in a championship game, and then 2017 against Auburn as well. I think that he could be a quality backup like you stated. I think he could be a starter maybe on a year or two basis. A guy like Chase Daniel, has been around, been in the right system. What type of team or system do you think would fit a guy like this skill set?
To me, watching him, he does actually remind me of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay.
Not super athletic. The arm is not, top level. But you do see him. I think it shouldn't be understated that one person that everyone likes in this draft, Jacob Eason. Mm-hmm. He beat him out his freshman year.
Yep.
Ran him out of town.
Yep.
A guy that everyone's going to love next year, Justin Fields, beat him out, ran him out of town, and went 35-7.
Yep.
So it's easy to say, he's not all that athletic, but he turned out to be a guy leading a top 5 team for 3 years, including a national championship run, and he beat some of those guys out.
Right.
So he might not be the flashiest or the biggest name that you're going to see. I think he would have a chance if he does become a starter wherever he goes to win football games. It'd be one of those things where you don't want to rely on him a ton, but he is going to get the job done and get your team into the right place. He doesn't turn the ball over all that much. Only 18 picks over 3 seasons started, so over 40 games. And that's against high-level, top-level teams.
Yeah, the SEC is definitely a comparative division in regards to if you can win here and you can be successful here, you can at least get a glimpse of what they may be able to do in the NFL. He was able, like you said, to be successful year in and year out, and this year he had several injuries, several different causes of like suspensions and things like that limited the talent around him. Yeah. I mean, we're watching this game where he is playing against LSU, and these guys are teeing off on him literally every play.
His receivers are getting mugged.
Yeah, like
it's clear that Georgia was not as talented as this LSU team, and not as talented as they were earlier in his career.
Correct.
And even so, he is playing. He's kind of dragging these guys along.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at a realistic spot for him, we had Grant Delpit coming off the edge. I mean, you would hope that he sees this, but then you look at it, it's like, oh, it's play action. What are you supposed to do? They disguised it. He takes the sack. He doesn't throw something up, which is fine. You would hope that he gets to be in a spot like. I know New England.
That the play action that he got sacked on, that's the exact type of thing that they run.
Exactly. Like I think that if he was at a place like that, you have Hoyer for a year. I know they drafted Stidham last year, but Stidham was fairly limited. What limitations Fromm has are going to be completely masked if he can master the New England system, because they take very limited shots down the field. They try to get the ball out as quickly as possible. They try to do what they can to try to make easy throws for the quarterback. And
this guy's getting mugged by Stingley.
Oh yeah, and
actually,
oh yeah. That's bad. I mean, and that's not great ball placement on that one. You're throwing a fade, you throw it on the inside as opposed to outside, but you would hope the receiver fights through that. And he has had several plays like that where, maybe he didn't make the best play ever, but, he's not helped out by the receivers, making a poor effort on the ball or getting out-muscled. So, I mean, what other teams do you think might be? I mean, who knows about New England, but what other teams?
I think he would be actually a good fit in Minnesota. The scheme really does match up for what he's able to do. And I don't know if Kirk Cousins is a great comp, but it's close.
I think Kirk Cousins has a little bit more juice in his arm, but I think style of play, stylistically, I think Kirk Cousins is fair. That's what I was looking at.
Detroit, maybe.
Yeah, but you don't think that they're more vertical, like with Marvin Jones and Galladay, and they're trying to push the ball downfield a little bit more. I think one thing that
could be said is that they do build around Stafford. They have at least.
That's true.
So it would be hard to tell. But they have a couple good receivers, and as long as Patricia's there, I'm sure they want to run the ball.
Mm-hmm. One team I think that they would do well to bring in a guy like this would be Washington. I think you have a similar situation to RG3 and Kirk Cousins, where you have a quarterback room of 2 young guys that can compete. Jake Fromm is not like bringing in Joe Burrow or Tua. Like those guys, bringing in an early guy, you're gonna potentially shatter Haskins' confidence. You want Haskins to either A, rise to the occasion, beat out Fromm, and be better for it, or B, you want to know that, hey, we just spent a 4th round pick on a guy like Kirk Cousins. We spent a 4th-round pick on a guy that beat out our big-time starter, and unfortunately, we didn't want that to happen, but that means that this guy is going to perform better than a 1st-round guy, and you have him cheap, you have him, locked in to where even if he does have a little bit of success, you don't necessarily have to go right out and pay him $30 million if his next set of contracts. Like, I don't think that you can lose if you're a team like Washington, with a young starter, or even a team like Denver. Maybe I don't think that we've seen enough from Drew Lock to think that we need to get him some competition, but. A team like that who has a young starter in place where you can get a tangible backup and somebody who can push him, somebody who's been successful, and if they end up being him out, hey, you have some guy on a cheap deal. What do you think about those?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think he's going to drop that far. I could see him in the 2nd or the 3rd,
right?
Which then becomes you may be wanting to play this guy at some point.
Yeah,
depending on who you have on your roster already, it could become difficult integrating him.
Right.
You'd have to have some stuff in place.
What do you think is the best landing spot for him? Like, if a team was to say, you know what, we either had an injury or we want to go a different direction at our quarterback position, like, what do you think is the best team? I think the Patriots would be the best team based on his skill set, based on their quarterback need, for him to be successful long term.
I think, you might see, I like Minnesota. You go in, Kirk Cousins has some contract left, but gives you an opportunity if he does pan out down the line to get off that contract, which some people hate. It is a lot of money, and you never know where that team goes anyways.
Right. All right. Well, that's it for Jake Fromm this time. I'm sure we'll have a little bit more discussion about some of these quarterbacks. We'll be back here soon. Until then, we're out.